Guys, welcome back to Serial at Midnight. My name is Heath Holland, and Brian Krey returns. Brian, welcome back.
Thank you for having me, Heath. I'm very honored to be able to talk about this subject.
We have a great time with these conversations, and I'm always
Yeah,
I like getting these like glimpses into your mind. And this one is, I think you said before we,
you're one of
we
the few
rolled.
people that do.
Well, you said before we rolled that this may be the furthest out we're going to get. We're
Yeah,
talking about overlords of the UFO. Now, people, what is overlords of the UFO?
Overlords of the UFO is a really badly made documentary about UFOs from the 1970s, 1976 specifically. And there was kind of like a trend of these UFO documentaries in the 70s. I think it started because the book Chariots of the Gods by Eric von Daniken was very popular, and it was made into kind of a uh, pseudo documentary by a company called Sun Classics Pictures, I believe. And I think that was actually successful, and it kind of became a trend to do these very low budget, badly edited documentaries about the paranormal. And there's just something for me about these UFO documentaries from the 70s. I'm not a UFO aficionado, but there's just something about this particular era of ufology that I find really fascinating. And I think it started because WNYW in New York, which is Channel 5 and which is now Fox, before it became Fox, before it started showing things like Cops and Married with Children, they would actually show some of these movies in prime time, which is kind of weird in retrospect that you could sit down and watch something as bizarre as this and eat your TV dinner at 8 o'clock at night. And whenever I would see these later as a teenager, uh, on kind of, they would be on stations like TNT or TBS, I would start taping them. And I would just know it was those types of films. Sometimes I wouldn't even know what the name of the film was because I'd missed the beginning. And I'd accumulated a couple of these that I'd taped off a cable, and then I kind of started looking for them on actual VHS. Like Overlords of the UFO, I actually used to have a used rental copy, a Be Kind Rewind copy, and I have three different DVDs of it. This is how much I love this one.
Do
I
any of
have
them have any special features like a
no, no, I wish
commentary
they
or
did. I wish I could be the person to produce this. This one is, and if you do
that
the
cover? Holy cow.
this is the poster, which is absolutely terrible. It's like the Heat Miser or something. I don't know what this has to do with Overlords of the UFO.
Maybe
I don't know
that's
what it
one of
has to
the
do with Overlords. I don't
Etherians.
know what it has to do with UFO. But
Yeah.
this is from Sinister Cinema, a company that usually people think is connected to Alpha Video, but it is not. It's just that we get material from the same three people, which is like Sam Sherman, my former boss, Mark Heller, and I don't know who the third person is. Here's a one I got from MediaOutlet.com. You can see my Robotech Perfect
Robotech.
collection soundtrack. I lost the case. This is actually the best version I've gotten on DVD. You could probably still get it from this site, MediaOutlet.com. Yeah, as you can tell, there's never been uh, an authorized, licensed version of this. And here it is on a set called UFO Sightings, Visitors, and Mysteries from TGG Direct, along with four other movies. And this is probably the worst quality one because they stuff a lot of other stuff on the discs. But
Okay, so let me jump in here too because I was what you were talking, I was doing a little bit of quick on the fly internet research. And so Chariot of the Gods was put out as a film in 1970. And I
okay,
think that did launch this sort of like cottage industry of like, we know not where the UFO comes from, but we will like this that whole thing where you get some vaguely reputable looking news guy to stand there with a microphone and talk about the aliens and the UFOs
right.
and stuff. And then but
It's
on the other
amazing to
end
me
of that,
people would go to see these in theaters. I mean, imagine if you had a date and you took your date to.
I
to
know,
see
right?
Overlords of the UFO.
Maybe we'll hear from some people that did. Maybe we'll
I
hear
hope
from people
so.
who were like, well, because they'd have to be, if this was 76, Overlords of the UFO was 1976. In Search of, with Leonard Nimoy, was 1977. So there's a whole thing happening around this time where this search for the metaphysical, it's also exploitation. That's the thing, is like this
Yeah,
movie's, it's, I don't even know if the people that made it believe in what they're talking about because it feels so
that's
exploitative.
that's what's so interesting to me. Do these people actually believe this stuff, or are they just hucksters?
Over the last 20 years, I have been a television and radio reporter in the Pacific Northwest. And during that period of time, I have passed along to the public hundreds of news stories from all portions of the world about the UFOs, the unidentified flying objects, the flying saucers. I have seen UFOs, but in all of those news stories, I've detected one missing fact, one incredible, glaring omission. Not one world public agency or scientific group has even offered a partial solution to this most amazing mystery of all time. No public authority has told us who are the overlords of the UFO and why are they here right now at this time.
You know,
Charlatans.
charlatans. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
but see,
I
the
like
thing
hucksters.
is, the thing about this that's kind of interesting is that these films, they're not dark and edgy. They're kind of silly, and I'd like to think that the people in them, they're essentially harmless or benign. I don't. This is not going into like the modern day UFO phenomenon, which is very much about like shadow governments and
Mhm.
back then people that had experiences with UFOs, they were called contactees, not abductees. So the whole kind of the narrative of UFOs went in a very different direction, I think, after that Whitley Strieber book, Communion, became so popular. And everybody just started seeing the gray aliens, and it became very much about the government. It became basically the X-Files. The X-Files is really
Yeah.
what people think of with the UFOs. And what I like about these is that even though they are spooky, and there's some, like in Overlords, there's like this, what about the UFO, the people that have been kidnapped by UFOs that haven't returned, and then they never explain what they're talking about. It's essentially, they're silly. They're harmless. I mean, they're fun to watch.
It's interesting to put it in the context of the time too, because I like what you're talking about, and I'm gonna yes and that. The 70s especially. So let's look at like what was happening with the hippie movement in the 1960s. There was this search
Right.
for the metaphysical. There was a search for, let's get in touch with the true meaning of things and get cosmic. That's where the Jesus movement came from, where all these people were like, when Elton John talks about Jesus freaks out in the streets, they were
And Jesus
probably
Christ
watching
Superstar.
Overlords. What's that?
And Jesus Christ Superstar is a perfect example of
There you go.
that whole thing. Yeah.
There was this seeking, there was this idea of like there is more out there than we have been thinking about or aware of, and that continues into the 70s. But I don't know that it survives past the 70s and maybe the very early 80s. But Overlords of the UFO is still rooted in this like maybe they're here, maybe they visited, maybe they mean us no harm, maybe they have things that they can share with us. They do talk about how they start to name all these experiences, all these contacts in Pascagoula, Mississippi. And what's
Right.
interesting is that this is my area, right? Like I'm in the deep south, and so
Really? Okay.
oh yeah, at one point in
Well,
time, actually,
I should mention the host, W. Gordon Allen. He's, I think, from Salem, but not Salem, Massachusetts, Salem, Oregon. So
oh,
he was supposedly I mean, he says he was, but he was, I'm sure he was, a radio reporter in
I
Salem.
mean, we can't take anything for granted.
Yeah, we can't. That's
Maybe
the
he
thing with
was.
any of this. I don't know what's true. He did write several books about ufology that have very unusual titles that obviously I've never read, but he presents himself as an expert on the topic.
Since the 1950s, it has been easy to point to the millions of suns in space and speculate that somewhere out there is the home of the UFO. That UFOs are spacecraft from some other Earth, orbiting some other sun, just like ours. from a visible sun in the visible universe. Perhaps so, perhaps not. But the UFOs could also be from an invisible dimension, in the invisible portion of the universe, which our science cannot easily detect.
I don't know in 1976 what you would do to kind of be an expert on UFOs. You know, I mean,
Well, I think that's the thing is that you just say that you are and you end up on something like this. There's no actual substance to this documentary. There's a
no,
lot of suggestions.
it's basically a rambling monologue by one man that's supported kind of by bizarre footage and a lot of times very bad watercolor paintings.
Well, yes, there's a lot of paintings that are static, and then maybe there's like limited animation.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the premise of the documentary as well. So the premise is, first of all, they call it a scientific new documentary. Um, it's they're trying to. The title is exploitative, but the premise is okay. There are these UFOs here. There have been all these sightings, but who are the overlords of the UFO? And
That's asked about every 5 minutes.
and then I
Just so you
guess
don't
the answer
forget.
to that is the Etherians.
And they
I'm
never
not.
mentioned the Etherians until the end of the movie, so
Well, that's the thing. So I've watched it twice now, preparing for this, and I'm like, they don't really tell us anything about.
I think they said what Mr. Allen thought is that UFOs come from another dimension.
Since the 1950s, it has been easy to point to the millions of suns in space and speculate that somewhere out there is the home of the UFO. That UFOs are spacecraft from some other Earth, orbiting some other sun, just like ours. From a visible sun in the visible universe. Perhaps so, perhaps not. But the UFOs could also be from an invisible dimension, in the invisible portion of the universe, which our science cannot easily detect.
So I think he says something like they materialize from an etheric dimension. So I guess they're Etherians because they materialize from an etheric dimension.
Well, they present
But
that.
what does that mean? I don't know.
They present that this ships come from. There are those that come from underwater.
Today, the Canadian edited UFO report and other such publications are the only other mediums which have carried stories which have filled the Venezuelan newspapers and tell of UFOs which emerge from under the sea off Puerto Rico and continue to the U.S., South America, and Europe. Undersea disturbances of a major nature have occurred in this area for many years.
They talk about how
Right, they show the map of the undersea UFO base. You should show that for our viewers because
okay,
some of them might want to go there.
and they say that yeah, if you do, be very careful and report back. Take your iPhone with you and report back with photos, with video footage. One of the interesting things that does come out of this documentary is someone says that they believe that there are 3 or 4 different groups of aliens at different stages of development that are
Yeah.
visiting. And I'm like,
Yeah.
well, that's an interesting
What does
idea.
that mean?
But we should mention there's like high pedigree for some of the people in this thing. Uri Geller is a huge deal. Now, Uri Geller is
He was friends with Michael Jackson, so I guess
he's an illusionist. But see, this is the
Right.
thing. This is where the charlatan element comes in because he's an illusionist and a magician. And there's actually you can go on the internet and find a CIA document that's been made public about Uri Geller and how he achieves some of his tricks. And from a guy, it was the guy that was working with him, and he was like his manager for a while, and he kind of exposed how a lot of the tricks were done. So I don't think that Uri Geller is necessarily the real deal in terms of being a psychic who had. I'm not even sure how they really connect him to UFOs in this documentary.
There's no connection. It's totally they just took footage of him, one of his performances per se, and just cut it in. I think at some point he says something like, "I have never seen an extraterrestrial, but I think I will one day." And it's a very, very loose connection.
Yeah, they're more
But it
interested
takes up
in.
like 15 minutes of the movie, so they're that much closer to the 90-minute running time.
That's exactly right. Yeah, and they've got footage of him. The premise of Uri Geller is that he has this
He bends
bioelectric.
spoons.
He bends spoons, he bends keys, he has this bioelectric energy that he can channel, and it's illusionism, or illusion. It's like it's just showbiz, right?
Right.
Do you see any keys
No.
bending?
I see one. Oh, yes, this is bending.
One key
Wait
is
a minute, I
bending.
have to show this to the TV. Yeah, this key is going. Yeah, wait a minute.
Yes, definitely. It's a big, thick brass schlag or schlager type of key,
I don't know what this
just
key
like
is
the one he
for.
bent last night
You
for
see
us.
what I'm doing is I'm stroking it very, very gently, and yeah, it's curling up more. I don't know
You see
how
that,
well
Ken?
you can see it.
It's really happening, huh?
It's bending even more.
Yeah, this will curl up a little more here.
But they do also talk to Stanton Friedman, who is a huge deal in the UFO community, and he's still regarded as this,
Yeah, he's best known for kind of writing about the Majestic 12 conspiracy theory, which has been pretty much discredited. That there were these 12 scientists that kind of knew about. I hope I'm getting it right because, like I said, I'm not an expert on this stuff. Knew about crashed UFO technology. And I think he had written about that, or written a book about that. But he's in all these kind of documentaries from the 70s about UFOs, usually just as a talking head,
But you know what's interesting is that, so this is 1976. In the 90s and even in the 2000s, I would listen to Coast AM just for fun.
Okay.
So it's an AM radio show. People who are watching this probably know what Coast to Coast AM is.
Mhm.
These guys were still in, Uri Geller, Stanton Friedman. These guys were still in the community, still highly respected. But even Coast to Coast, like I think we all know Coast to Coast AM is also exploitative. Like you listen to it for fun, but you don't take it too seriously because there's no proof for any of this. It's like campfire stories is essentially what it is. I don't want to be too dismissive because I know that a lot of people do have a lot of belief in this thing, but we're specifically talking about overlords of the UFO and this.
Yeah, and there are just ridiculous things in this. Like they talk about how cattle mutilations are the work of invisible flying critters.
Yeah.
Which are, I guess, living organisms that we can't see that materialize. Well, I guess they don't materialize because they're invisible. They come from another dimension, and they're the ones mutilating cattle. And this is illustrated with really bad watercolor paintings.
Other more incredible things are happening. During a single year, for instance, nearly 10,000 head of farmers' livestock have been mutilated in an area from Texas to eastern Oregon and Washington. Police and agricultural scientists alike are helpless. No flying predator exists which mutilates an animal's tender parts or swallows it up completely, leaving behind a bare skeleton. UFOs can be blamed, says the University of Wyoming student newspaper. There is now striking evidence that the cause is not a configurated UFO spacecraft, but what is mistaken for a UFO is something just as new to science. Invisible flying predators, which can be photographed with the aid of an ultraviolet filter 18A and Ectacolor film.
One of the things that's interesting about it to me, though, is that it's like because it's a more innocent time, obviously before the internet and before we got more cynical and everybody got coked out in the 80s, and angry and paranoid, and it's a little bit more thoughtful. It's kind of like a college.
It's almost like a mockumentary, but it's a real documentary. It's like somebody,
but it's like
made a
entry
parody of
level.
this.
It is. It's like entry level. What's the word I'm looking for? Philosophy. I mean, it's like entry level philosophy where
It has this like stoned way type of dialogue. It's like even though it's a documentary, it's like Ed Wood dialogue. And it's kind of profound, but it also sounds incredibly stupid at the same time. And it reminds me, and not to bring up X-Files again, but there's an episode of X-Files where I love where Mulder talks about he likes watching Plan 9 from outer space because the dialogue is so stupid that whatever problem he's working on, it helps him clear his head, that he can focus on it.
If we are to understand the origin of the UFO, we must be ready to vision another dimension which penetrates our earthly reality. It is a higher energy dimension from which the UFO can materialize to our vision, our cameras, and our scientific instrumentation. It is back into this higher energy dimension that the UFO returns to report to those who sent it out. The crew of the UFO is an especially designed robot humanoid which was produced to do its job in both dimensions. Target Earth is a long-time intelligence and sample gathering project of the aliens of the UFO.
And I've tried this many times myself, and it never works. But
Mulder
I do think it has something to do with why I like these kind of things so much. Because, like I said, I'm not a ufologist or anything. And usually, when I tell people I like these films, they start talking about like I said, these conspiracies or things like Behold a Pale Horse, which I kind of find reprehensible. And I'm not interested in that. I'm not interested in kind of this dark, because in this, really what they're saying is that the UFOs are here just basically because we have the nuclear bomb, and they're worried about us having the nuclear bomb and possibly being able to destroy ourselves or destroy other planets. There's nothing about, I mean, what is the UFO phenomenon about? That they're taking genetic samples from us to create hybrid human, or it all has a very darker tone now. And this is much, like you said, it's very hippie-ish. It's like, hey man, we just don't want you to blow up the earth.
So we were flying around and we saw that, man, you're getting into some nasty stuff. Just like, hold on, bro.
Yeah,
Just put the brakes a little bit.
Sure.
But there's like a more innocent.
I have plenty of these films.
If it's possible for a documentary that talks about taking people for examinations and like a big eye in a TV, like they talk about this, like
they keep saying they were examined by a TV eye, and that made me think of the Stooges song. And it's like, I don't think the people that made this documentary were into the Stooges. So was that something just people said back in the 70s?
The Pascagoula Press first headlined the story October 12, 1973, and told the nation about two shipyard workers, Calvin Parker and Charles Hickson, who had their fishing trip interrupted by a glowing, blue-lighted UFO which landed near them. Two humanoids took them aboard for a physical examination, placing them under a large TV-like eye.
Hey man, there's like a TV eye over there. Like this. I just thought that was weird.
It is, well, and then there's an illustration too, and it's like this crude little like box with an eye in it. So I assume it comes from
maybe
science
he's into
fiction.
UFOs. I have no idea.
I think it's informed by science fiction movies of the 50s and the 60s. Really, I'm thinking of This Island Earth, and like he puts this screen together.
Right.
All of the stuff it just feels so innocent. It feels very like, now it's not like the aliens and the UFOs are here just to help. There is a little bit of a, people are terrified, people are taken up and freaked out.
The sanity of UFO witnesses was questioned.
The mental health of UFO observers was questioned.
Exactly. There you go. But it doesn't have that really sinister, dark,
No.
It's not a fearful documentary. It's a hopeful kind of a documentary.
Yeah.
There's one of the things I wanted to mention is Stanton Friedman says, I think this is actually a really interesting point because it's that philosophy thing we're talking about, like like philosophy 101. He says like, he's like, we talk about take me to your leader. The joke is take me to your leader, but on Earth we don't have a leader. Every country represents itself. Who would represent Earth? We have no singular representative that would represent the entire planet. I'm like, well, that's actually true. That's a good point. We're thinking
we'd have to think of ourselves as Jack Kirby once said, spaceship Earth, everybody's on it. We couldn't think of ourselves as just a collection of countries.
Yeah. Well, now I'm thinking of spaceship Earth at Epcot, and I want to I want to thank the Phoenicians. Um, okay, one more thing I want to talk about is
Sure.
they get very specific with some of the stuff. We talk about the Ethereans. Yumo is
Yumo.
16 light years from Earth. Now look, where does this come from? Toward the end of the movie, they're like, Yumo is 16 light years from Earth. Like, what is Yumo? How do we know that Yumo is out there? And how do we know that it's 16 light years from Earth? Where is this information coming from?
It was basically this whole thing that came out of Spain, where this gentleman was writing that the UFOs came from a planet called Umo, and they're kind of like the typical UFO pictures of the era that look like cereal bowls
Yeah.
or paper plates, but they have this kind of odd writing on the bottom of them, which looks really fake. It looks like it's just kind of scribbled onto the picture.
There are some very significant things about this UFO type. Under the bell-shaped hull are 3 spheres. It is these globes which, when excited by a high energy level, cause the UFO to become immune to gravity. At this point, the UFO begins to take on a glow. At a higher state of excitation, it is ready to move into its home dimension, a dimension which is not light years away, but right here, interpenetrating our reality.
But yeah, supposedly Umo was the source of the flying saucers, according to this one. I think it all came out of Spain, and I
They
think it's been
present
pretty
so
much
much
discredited.
they present
But
so much speculative information as a fact. I'm just like,
well, yeah, yeah.
Knowledge, the key to the secrets of the universe. Man's pursuit of the mystery surrounding the UFO and the Etherians continues. And although many books have been written about the subject, the best available information is speculation. So what we have offered you is the best available speculation. 2 questions. First, who are the Etherians? Notwithstanding their similarity to man, the Etherians' body is different from man's. They live in their own dimension, so we see only their servants, the humanoids. The Etherian overlords of the UFO have thinking minds, feelings, and emotions like we do. They have a strong sense of will and a strong sense of purpose. And they live in their own dimension, so they can't set foot in our material world, according to Dr. Steiner. Next, why are they here? Why are they interested in Earth humans? Maybe we are doing something here on Earth that is disturbing their world, their dimension. Maybe we are doing something here on Earth that is upsetting the balance of the universe. UFOs have been seen for centuries. Is this recent stepped-up activity over the last 30 years due to some recent disturbances within our dimension? Maybe we have sent giant shock waves throughout the universe, and the Etherians are here on Earth, trying to find out what they can do about this intrusion. One thing could well be the high harmonics of the sonic boom of the supersonic bomber, such as the B-1. An interdimensional space quake could have sent shock waves into their dimension. And of course, atomic devices could be another element that is disturbing beings in other dimensions. But the Etherians seem to be sampling our dimension by human kidnappings and the taking of animals and the taking of sophisticated electronic devices made by our Earthman scientists. The Etherians seem to want to know what we are doing, and we had better know too. Think about what we are doing to ourselves, because it could have a profound effect on beings in other dimensions. And this whole question about UFOs could be a much larger question than devices simply flying around in our airspace. We will meet the Etherians, the overlords of the UFO, when we are worthy.
you want to talk about the music of the music, if you can call it music?
I love the music because it's like this weird kind of synthesizer music. There's some kind of like guitar stuff going on. There's the space voyage to Umo sequence that supposedly shows us going. It's kind of like ripping off 2001. I guess maybe they thought people could drop acid if they were still doing that in 1976 to this,
Oh yeah.
where we go to Yumo and we've kind of got this Carlos Santana type guitar playing at the same time.
At 800,000 miles, Jupiter looks to the Earth-developed eye like this. To the Yumo, perhaps different. Jupiter's moon, Ganymede, is some 8,000 miles away and moves in its orbit. Its diameter, 3,000 miles. The Yumo intelligences took a heat measurement of the Jupiter hotspot. They compared the measurements to that of the surface of their sun and found it about the same. The other Jupiter moons were identified: Europa, Amalthea, Callisto, as they were named by Earth astronomers. The spacecraft continued to the next solar system checkpoint, also at the same time slowing its rate of travel. Saturn was identified with its strange moon, Titan. Titan rolled along the equatorial plane of Saturn like a wheel on a road. The Yumos identified its atmosphere, methane. In the vicinity of Saturn, they tuned to the history and the totality of knowledge of the solar system, accumulated since the time the sun was born. Knowledge lost, and knowledge still used, and knowledge to be rediscovered.
And again, it's all presented as absolute fact that, okay, the aliens come from Umo. We're going there now. There's no question about this. There's no kind of nothing is ever said. Nobody ever says, well, maybe this is true. It's just presented as fact. And
Yeah.
for instance, they say, there'll be a picture of a cereal bowl, and you'll hear W. Gordon Allen say, "Here's a UFO in the act of materializing from another dimension." And it's like, well, how do we know that? How do we know that? It just is,
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know what else to say about this. I mean,
no, it's like I said, I have a lot of these films. There's something I enjoy collecting, and I put them on, and they relax me, and it's something kind of unique, and I find them funny, but I also find them kind of, like I said, kind of profound in a strange way.
Mhm.
I don't want anybody to think I'd be laughing at them, because some of these people probably really do believe this stuff.
Yeah.
But there's also the question that they don't believe it at all, and they're just trying to become famous by talking about this stuff. So there's that element too,
I think you hit the nail on the head. It's this strange crossroads of hope and belief and also skepticism that exists in this one thing. And you see, like, it's all of those things equally at the same time. Like, you're like, well, this is garbage, but it'd be fun if it was true. Is there
Right.
any merit to this? Like, there's all these things happening at the same time. Well, like, like Mulder, we want to believe. I think we
Right.
want to think it's fun that there's something out there. But this documentary, and I'm not even comfortable really calling it a documentary. It is a documentary film, but it's
Yeah, what is it? A pseudo documentary, pseudoscience? What
yeah,
is it? I guess it's really exploitation. It's an
it is.
exploitation movie at the
Yeah.
end of the day. That's the best way to describe it.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. But I don't know. There's something really charming and almost innocent about these things.
It's like I think folk art is like the best way to kind of describe it. It's naive folk art, I would say.
Yeah, I like that. That's actually a good note to probably wrap it up on. What's going on with you and what's going on with Alpha Video? Is there anything you want to talk about that might
Well,
be coming down
I
the
could tell you the story of something that just came out. I don't. It might be controversial, but if you
Alpha
want to cut
Video
it
and
later.
controversy?
Well, you had mentioned in one of your recent videos, you kind of mentioned that in addition to all the kind of public domain B westerns and the silent movies that we do these kind of micro budget horror films, which I mean, I've never really understood why we do it. It's all just that was the taste of my predecessor, Steve Kaplan, and for whatever reason, it's a public domain label. I always thought we should move on to kind of like licensing other old films, like kind of VCI did. They started out as a public domain label, but for some reason, Steve just kind of wanted to do this micro budget horror stuff.
Well, it sells. That's probably why he wanted to do
Does
it.
it? I see. That's the thing. Some of them don't really sell that well, and
No.
I don't know. He was a horror fan himself, but he was really a horror fan of like old horror movies, like the Universal monsters or some of like the 50s rubber suit monster stuff, like Giant Gila Monster, Killer Shrews. So I never really got it. I also I think everybody should be aware, if they're not aware already, that Steve Kaplan, the guy who ran Alpha Video before me, he is really most famous as the guy who discovered G.G. Allen. And I don't know if you know who G.G. Allen is, but yeah. And if you know anything about G.G. Allen, he's tasteless, crude, and to this day, they're on all of Gigi's recordings. I think are on Performance Records, which is on Steve's label, even though he's not involved with Alpha anymore. He still has his record label, Performance Records. So I don't know if maybe that has something to do with it. Kind of like he made so much money off of G.G. Allen that these kind of horror movies are the equivalent of the cinematic equivalent of G.G. Allen. So sometimes I have some. I'm not a horror fan. I'm kind of forced to be into that world because even though Steve's gone, people are still approaching me all the time about putting out their horror movies, and I'm really very ignorant of the whole genre. If it's black and white and slow moving, I can kind of handle it, but I'm not a Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street. I don't know anything about Giallo movies or
But you know a lot about Overlords of the UFO.
I know a lot about Overlords of the UFO, but what I'm trying to say is Overlords of the UFO is basically benign, and nobody's getting anything stuck up their rectum in it or anything like that.
Like in the Academy Award winning movie Everything Everywhere All at Once. Anyway,
I still haven't seen that. My favorite movie of the last year was Holdovers. I guess that's kind of that's. I'm just too innocent. I'm too much of like a Hal Ashby type of person for this world.
Really need more Hal Ashby's. So
yeah. Well, if anybody wants to give me some money, I'll do a coming of age comedy. But I guess we did a movie. We did a movie a few years ago called. Somebody contacted me, a British guy, Tom Lee Rudder. Day of the Stranger, which was a psychedelic spaghetti western, but it was shot in England, so it's more of like a tea and crumpets western. But what I was really excited by was that Alejandro Jodorowsky gave it a good review, and I actually was able to put that on the cover. I was like, oh my God, I've achieved something. Jodorowsky, I was able to put his name on the cover of a DVD I made. It was shown at some British horror festival called Horror on the Sea Film Festival. And I guess because it was shown there, I've been contacted by a lot of other people that have had their films shown at this festival. And I was contacted by somebody who made this movie. Now this is going to be, I'm going to destroy this after I show it to you. So this is going to be the only time this is going to be, and I swear it's going in my garbage. This movie, Terrorize, it was called, was licensed to me by the director, who had found out about us because of Day of the Stranger. And it went to production with our manufacturer, Allied Vaughn, and it was going to come out. And then I found out, I got an email from Ron Bonk at SRS Cinema that the director, now this was promoted as the director's cut of this movie. And of course, me being totally ignorant of things, I had no idea there were previous releases of this. I thought it was just him. Like, I could say a movie I made in college is the director's cut. I have no idea. But the movie was actually owned by SRS Cinema, and Ron Bonk contacted me about it. And he said, you can't put that out. So I had to cancel this. And like I said, look at this now because it's going to be destroyed. But we did a cover. Al Landron, our artist, did this nice cover, and I'm like, that's a shame for it to go to waste. And he said, Ron said, well, I can license you the actual movie. He recut it and tried to relicense it to you under a different name. So it just came out under its original name, Psychopaths, and it's actually 2 minutes shorter. So that's kind of a typical kind of thing I could have to go through with licensing this micro budget horror, where people sometimes don't understand that they can't license it to more than one person. And so yeah, I mean, I don't, would I recommend this? I don't know. I mean, it's, if you like softcore torture porn with British accents, then go for it. But I mean, it's not my cup of tea. But that's kind of a typical kind of thing I have to go through with licensing low budget films. I never understood why Steve thought, okay, we put out silent movies and we put out B westerns and old TV shows, and okay, then we'll put out stuff like this, you know. And look, if filmmakers want to come to me and they want me to put that stuff out, you know, some of these people are great. Like I've mentioned Sebastian Godin, who did the Abominations of Frankenstein. I've mentioned Joshua Kennedy, my friend Mark Mackner, who has his Daisy Durkin series. He's a Philadelphia filmmaker. He's a great guy. But yeah, it's kind of a weird kind of side thing with us. And if you look at the Alpha Video catalog, which is over 4,000 titles, those films kind of make up like 2% of the catalog. And yeah, it's kind of strange. So, and like I said, I'm not really a horror guy, so I need all the help I can get with that.
Yeah. At the same time, the Doc Thomas documentary is an
Yeah.
incredible acquisition, in my opinion. I love that.
Yeah, I would love to do more stuff like that. I mean, that hasn't sold that well. And maybe that's because it's on streaming as well, and maybe that's something people more want to stream and don't necessarily want to own. But I mean, that's without a doubt the best reviewed film that we've ever put out, because when it came out 10 years or maybe 12 years ago, you know, it got amazing reviews, Kenneth Tynan and Leonard Maltin, everybody. And it didn't come out on physical media. But you know, and now that it's out, I feel like it's too late. You know, it's too late for us to kind of reap the whirlwind of the good publicity it got. And I think maybe that's the kind of thing that people don't necessarily want to own. I mean, is there something different about, like, I'm not familiar with Doc Thomas, but for instance, you know, I'm a big Monkees fan. If they came out with a documentary about Tommy Boyce and Bobby Hart, I'd want to see it. I don't know if I'd want to own it. You know, I mean, I don't know, you know, would I want to own it? I'm not sure. Maybe I just want to see it once, you know.
Well, I think right now we're living in a very fractured time I think these are the twilight days of physical media. And I don't mean in the sense that, well, it's all going to go away, but no, it's not that it's going to go away. People just won't care anymore. We're seeing that more and more. You know, I made a video maybe it was a month ago, and the enemy is not anybody's trying to take things away from you. And there's this victimization in fandom where they go like, they want to take our Blu-rays away. Now, what's going to happen is people just stop caring, and fewer people care from day to day. And I think that's what we're seeing with a lot of the boutique scene, is that the numbers. Now, look, some companies are having massive success, but there's a lot of competition, and the numbers are they're continuing to decline. You know, there are more titles coming out, but there are fewer people buying them, is what I'm saying. So
Yeah.
I think this is probably we're getting near the end of something here, and I hope that that's not true, but evidence says otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, I'm seeing these smaller labels kind of getting licensing major films, and I don't know how to bring Alpha Video into that world. I don't know if it's possible. Maybe because we're just associated with public domain material. For instance, about 20 years ago, they had done a box set of the TV show, and I have no idea how they got the rights to it. It was all on the up and up. I think they got it through CBS because I think someone in the owner's family had a contact at CBS. But there was a show called Erie, Indiana, that was on Fox
Joe
Kids.
Dante.
Remember that? Do you remember that?
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
and the only time it's actually been on DVD is from Alpha Video. And long before I worked for the company, it went out of print, or the licensing deal ended. And I've gotten constant emails and messages that, when are you going to put that out again? And I had mentioned that to the owner, to possibly, could we do that again? Because we need material and there's a demand for it. And he didn't know really how it came about. I found out that the show was owned by Hearst Media, and I did actually get a hold of somebody at Hearst Media, but they told me they sold their library to Lionsgate, and somebody at Lionsgate would be in contact with me, which they never have.
Yeah.
And, I'm sure Lionsgate has their own physical media deal, but that's the perfect example of, when I try to do something a little more high profile, even something that we've had out before, I kind of get stuck on the at the front door, it gets slammed in my face,
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know what to say. It's an interesting time for sure. Windows are closing, and I'm hearing that from other people too. It's not just you.
Yeah.
And the studios are not licensing things like they used to. I hear that as well. Like I came with money to license this thing, and they said no. Anything else from Alpha that you want to talk about really quick? Anything? Because I covered the latest batch that I had, but is there anything else that
Well,
this is your time to hype
I
and
didn't send you
promo?
a copy of this because it's not available. Because it's available from other labels. So I don't like to kind of promote when we put out things that are available from other labels, because they're usually better quality. We use DVD minus ours to keep it down. And but this is something we just did, which has never been on Alpha Video DVD before. And it's The Man Who Laughs. And I mean, I don't know where Sam Sherman got it from, but it's got the original Universal score and sound effects, which is I did watch it on Tubi. It's on Tubi, but it's with a new score and without the sound effects. But to watch it like this is really nice. Now, I'm sure this is available. I know this has been available from Kino and other things. But if you really want a new cover and my liner notes, where of course I talk about how it inspired the creation of the Joker. You can if you just want it. I had never really seen the movie before, so it was an eye opener for me, because it really is a great movie, and I think it's kind of a shame that it's best known for inspiring the Joker, because it's a very kind of tragic tale, and it's a sympathetic character. Maybe that's why we keep trying to make the Joker a sympathetic character. I always think that the Joker should be the one villain in Batman's rogues gallery that isn't sympathetic. But it's kind of a shame the film is just known for that, because it really is a great movie. Paul Lenny, who directed Waxworks, and it really is. I guess it's considered a universal horror, but it's he's not a monster or anything like that. If anything, the people that do what they do to him are the monsters. And the other thing, comics related, that I noticed about the film is that Doctor Doom's origin in Fantastic Four Annual 2 by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby is so similar to this film, because Doom's father gets killed and his friend Boris takes the young Victor away from Latveria, and it's very much like the beginning of this film. So The Man Who Laughs not only inspired the Joker, it inspired Doctor Doom too. So the two greatest comic book villains of all time are inspired by this film. I thought that
So
was
many
really
of the comic stories that we know, and because comics have continued, uh, that's how we remember. They were inspired by these movies that they were watching. The writers were inspired by the movies that they had
sure.
seen, or
And of
you
course,
know,
it's a Victor Hugo novel, and
yes,
I mean,
yeah,
Jack Kirby and Bill Finger were very well read, so
yeah.
it's not necessarily the movie, but it's very interesting.
Well, I watched a video the other day about how Spring-Heeled Jack, the British
Yes.
whatever psychopath. I don't know how you would define Spring-Heeled Jack, but that he was an inspiration for Batman. I was
Yeah.
like, yeah, they just brought all these things forward with them. All right, let's put a bow on this one for the
Okay.
time being. So we want to hear from people about Overlords of the UFO. we want people to go check out Overlords of the UFO, I guess, and maybe let us know what they think about it. And I also want to
Don't
know.
look for Terrorize because you can't get it. You can't get it. So get Psycho, get Psychopaths.
Terrorize is in the garbage can. It's been
Yeah, it's going in the garbage can right now. I'm going to recycle the case for something else, maybe for that Robotech.
There you go.
CD.
Stay.
Can we do a video about Robotech? I mean, I guess there's enough Robotech videos out there.
No, let's do it. I freaking love Robotech.
Yeah, yeah.
Rick and Roy.
I love Macross, Do You Remember Love? And I desperately want that to come out on I have a bootleg of it. But that's one of my favorite movies of all time.
All right, well, we're doing that. We're for sure. We're gonna do that. Guys, thank you so much for watching this episode. Do continue the conversation in the comments below. Support Alpha Video via oldies.com and
or Amazon. All right, if you're comfortable using Amazon. I mean
the Soulless Corporation. Yeah.
Soulless Corporation, but sometimes they're buying a pair of pants and they have $10 left over to get free shipping. So if you want Psychopaths, if that's caught your eye.
Well, and hey, since we're promoting, if you use the Amazon link, that's the Serial at Midnight affiliate link, when you do buy those pants and the film
and Psychopaths,
then you're supporting everybody. You're getting your pants, you're supporting Alpha Video and Brian, and you're supporting Serial at Midnight. So that's 3
You're keeping me employed, and my cat Napalm fed.
The cat's name is Napalm?
Cat's name is Napalm.
Nice.
Named so by my ex-girlfriend, but
you're so punk.
Yeah. I said to her, so that's kind of like a name Beavis and Butthead would name a cat.
Yeah.
But it's his name, so he knows. He knows it, so I can't change it now.
Well, on behalf
of change his name to like Rodimus Prime now. It's too
He's like, what?
What kind of name is that
over here? What is this Rodimus?
Or is he called in the Hong Kong dubs Rodimus Prime?
Yeah.
Because I guess they thought he was on a road.
Rodimus Prime. All right, so on behalf of Serial at Midnight, Brian Krey, and Napalm.
He's here somewhere.
We will catch you later.
Okay.
See you soon, Brian.
Thank you.